Hello again, I'm back for a third take, so the third video. This is going to be the Astounding Science Fiction tag, which I believe was started by Michael K. Vaughan, and I'll put a link below to his version of this. I decided to do this because I thought, as I read a lot of science fiction, it would actually probably make quite a bit of sense to do this. This hat, my lovely hat that my wife made me from my last birthday, there will be an explanation for this later. If not, you may have already guessed it if you're a big science fiction fan. I'm going to do this video filmed in two different places. So I'm going to do the first few questions here, and then I'm going to move to another situation, which I thought might be a little bit of a change. So there we are. So the Astounding Science Fiction tag, which is all about your history with science fiction and that genre. So anyway, so let's go start on the first one. So the first question is, what science fiction book was the first one you read? Mine would be one of the Dragonfall 5 books by Brian Earnshaw. My primary school library had all these books, and I'm trying to get a picture and just pop one up there. And they were about a spacefaring family who were so far behind that they still flew around in their spaceship rather than using teleporting. And I think I may have mentioned before that they had a dog with huge ears that he used to fly on. I said I was probably about 5 or 6 when I read these, and I've got fond memories of them. Occasionally I've looked around to see if I could pick up versions of these books, but they're totally out of print, and the copies of them that I find don't seem to be that cheap. But you never know, one day I'll maybe be able to pick one up. That's probably the first major science fiction book I can think of reading. I'm trying to think if there's anything else obvious. No, that's probably it. So what was the last science fiction book that I read, and what did I think about it? The last science fiction book I read, I'll show you the copy, was The Man in the High Castle by Philip K. Dick. I am a really big Philip K. Dick, so this was actually a reread for me. I'm a Philip K. Dick fan. This was actually a big reread for me. I've probably not read it for about 10 years, but I loved it, as I always do. It's one of my favourite of his books. You do forget sort of how genius his ideas are and how he's intertwined all these alternate universes. If you don't know, it's set after the Second World War, but the Japanese and the Germans have actually won that war. And it's set in about 1950. And it's just incredibly clever how he weaves the history around. And it does read a lot. Like, if you read any of his non-science fiction books, like Puttering Around in a Small Land or Diary of a Crap Artist, it reads in some ways like that, because the narrative is actually quite straightforward for Dick, because a lot of his books are concentrate on, you know, what's real and what's not real, what is human and what it is to be human. And this one's just, in some ways, is quite slightly different. Can't recommend it highly enough for Philip K. Dick's books. I do think it's one of those books that multiple reads are well worth doing it, because I know some people who read it once and then thought, it's not that interesting, but the more you read it, the more you get into it, the more you see the layers that he's put into the book. So now let's go on for the third question in this section. You know, if you love science fiction, what made you love science fiction? Well, obviously I love science fiction, because otherwise I wouldn't be here doing this tag. I think the small things, it started off obviously with, I said, with that book there. I remember Star Trek as a child. It was, you know, syndicated around, it was on BBC Two, I think, late in the evenings. But the biggest thing was Star Wars in 1977-78, when Star Wars was released. I was at the perfect age to see it, and it was one of the things that really, really enhanced me and got me into science fiction. I still have. It's one of the things that got me reading science fiction. This is my original novelisation of the film, and I have the novelisations of all of them. I do have other copies of these books in different forms, but as with all novelisations at the time, you have the wonderful pictures from the film inside, which is what I love. Obviously, this first novel wasn't actually written by George Lucas. The story's by him, but obviously it was written by the wonderful author Alan Dean Foster. But the book was a marketing thing, because the book was released before the film, along with the comics. And so they don't totally follow the scripts of the film, so it makes them very interesting. But yes, it was one of the biggest things that got me into science fiction. I still love Star Wars to this day. I've got so much Star Wars stuff, books and everything. But yes, it was the biggest thing that got me into science fiction, and it made me sort of dig into it and then go down lots of avenues I never knew I would go down. So that is the third question. So the fourth question is going to be, what's my favourite science fiction movie? And for that one, I'm going to adjourn to another room and stand forlornly in front of my Blu-ray collection. So I will see you in a short while.
And now, preview time. When it comes to entertainment, you can't beat a good film. So let's take a look at what's coming your way.
I'm back, and this is my Vicious Attack Yorkie, little Gizmo, and he just wanted to make an appearance to say some of the noises you will hear from him, and some of them from his sister, the crazy Bat Labrador. I'll go and put you back down, little man. So, here I am for the second part of my video, and I said I'd be somewhere else. I had to balance the tripod upon my wife's wheelchair, so it's not it's a little precarious. And I said some of my Blu-rays behind me, there's loads more off to the left that you can't see, and it became plain why I came here for the rest of the Astounding Science Fiction tag. The next question is, what was my favourite science fiction movie? So I just thought it made sense to come here. My obvious answer is Star Wars, what people know as A New Hope, which was the first film. And that is probably my favourite. And I can show you how ridiculously Star Wars obsessed I have. I have various versions of it. This is the silver screen version, which is a fan together put version, which is basically taken from an original 35mm print, which George Lucas, as you know, he did the special edition and put loads of stuff in. That is just literally the original print that was shown in the cinemas. I have my original VHS version. Then we have special edition DVD versions. I've also got some more Blu-rays somewhere. Another set of VHSs. And another VHS set. And I do have more. So yes, it is silly, I know. But then another film I would put down as one of my favourites would be Blade Runner. I was lucky enough to see Blade Runner when it was released in the cinema in 81, 82. And I remember seeing it with a good friend of mine. And I loved it, he hated it. I'm of the very unpopular opinion that the theatrical version is the best. I will show you. This is my favourite set, because it has all the versions of the film in. Even got a film cell in it. But yes, it's got the theatrical version, which I love. I also own VHSs of it. I've also got some couple of Blu-rays of it and various ones. But it's the thing that first made me read Philip K. Dick. Because obviously after seeing the film, I got the book of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. And the book is very different in a very good way. So it's, you know, mightily inspired me. But yeah, most science fiction things, I love Star Trek. I love many, many things. So let's go on to the next tag of this. My favourite science fiction TV show. Well, obviously I'll name things like all the Star Trek ones. Probably Deep Space Nine is my favourite. I recently watched Strange New Worlds, which I loved because it gave the feeling of the original Trek. But if you want to go to some slightly different ones, We have Firefly, which I love, which explains the hat. If you're a Firefly fan, its hat makes sense. Which was a short-run series. It got cancelled, unfortunately. The film Serenity, which I have on the shelves over there somewhere. Yeah, you don't want to see me picking stuff off the shelves, but yes, it's a great science fiction thing. Do a less popular one now, which I think people should watch. Doesn't get enough praise. This is Ultraviolet. Nothing to do with the film. There's a film called Ultraviolet out there. It's nothing to do. This ran on Channel 4 at the back end of the 1990s. And it's about vampires, but not like you see. It's about people hunting vampires. They never even mention the word vampires. About this organisation hunting them down. And it's probably the best vampire media I've ever seen, as far as I'm concerned. It only ran for one season, which was what it was meant to do. And if you ever get a chance to watch it, watch it. Another great one to keep an eye out for is Jericho. It ended up running for 2 seasons. That is a great post-apocalyptic TV series, which I watch on occasion, again and again. And I said what I'm watching at the moment. If you want to hear what I'm watching now, I'm finally getting around to watching The Man in the High Castle, the Philip K. Dick adaptation on Amazon. We're wading our way through Star Trek Discovery, which I am enjoying, even if it doesn't really feel like Star Trek, but I'm really, really enjoying it. What other science fiction am I watching on TV? Raised by Wolves recently watched, which I've really enjoyed. There's a lot of stuff around. So let me go on to the next question. I'll just leave over and get my tablet to find out what the next question is. And just scroll up. What science fiction do you feel should be read more often? I just think science fiction generally should be read more often. It is not, as people assume, it's one thing. It's not. It covers a variety from social commentary to planetary romance to space opera. You can have dystopian stuff. You can have anything from A Clockwork Orange to latest Anna Reynolds book, which are 2 totally different type of things. I think science fiction as a genre just covers so much, but I try not to get too hung up on what genre something's in. You know, as far as I'm concerned, if you think it's science fiction, it is. It doesn't really matter. It just needs to be a good story, a good book, well written. And a lot of science fiction is. Some it's been underrated in the past, and finally it's getting some of the literary plaudits it deserves. But I just say, read science fiction. You know, especially a lot of the older stuff. There's so much stuff from the sort of 50s forward that people don't talk about anymore. I saw a video, Steve Donahue mentioned this before, that science fiction is one of those genres that almost eat its young. Stuff other than the real mainstream stuff doesn't get reprinted as much as some other genres. So things go by the by and some really, really stunning work gets missed. So let's have a look at the next question. My favourite science fiction book. Well, that probably changes with The Wind. I'd probably put a Philip K. Dick book there. I'm a big Asimov fan. Also, Philip Jose Farmer, Riverworld books. I haven't really got one that I could say that is my favourite book. I've got many books that I just love. And that is the end of the tag. As I said earlier, hopefully this will be an introduction to the sort of science fiction I like. I thought you might find it interesting, but my channel's not just going to include science fiction, so just keep your eyes out for interesting things. And basically, I'm just here to talk about things I love, which could be anything. And thank you again. I'm just going to go and see what's going on. Anyway, thank you.